Hey everybody, Dutch Sense here. 3:04 p.m. Central Time on Sunday, November 9th, 2014. And I've got you looking at Earthquake 3D here, which is the USGS feed of the most recent earthquakes. And you can see a 4.2 magnitude earthquake struck in central Oklahoma. And that's fairly sizable for the region. Definitely when we start getting into the mid 4.0 range, we start seeing possible damage that can occur at different houses, different infrastructure, can be shaken up a little bit by these upper 4.0 earthquakes. We need to watch this area in particular because it's a fracking location. And if there's any doubt, we can look at the last 7 days. Stack of earthquakes has happened there. USGS has acknowledged that fracking-induced earthquakes are the cause of the movement in Oklahoma specifically. Now I'd like to just go ahead and show you what's at the earthquake epicenter in case there's any doubt, and we'll zoom in on the location. You can see all these previous place marks. These are from previous earthquakes that have happened in the region that I've documented. We saw 5.0 activity in this area, central Oklahoma, in 2011. It caused damage at multiple people's houses. Chimneys collapsed, facades fell off the front of houses. That was just a few years ago. And that was up for debate whether or not fracking was the cause of that for several years. And now the American Geophysical Union, USGS, has acknowledged that the earthquakes have been caused by man-made events, and these are injection wells. What they do is they inject water deep down into the ground that fractures shale, which then releases natural gas, which they collect and then sell back off in the market. So we have two locations, each one about 1,000 feet away from the earthquake epicenter, and here's the other spot. You can see our apparatus, we got storage tanks, we have a pipeline, and a lot of these areas are fed by pipeline to one another and then to compressor stations where the natural gas is condensed and compressed and then pumped off and sold off on the market. So there's just two right there. You guys can come in and look around the area. I'm sure you'll find more in this direct vicinity. Here's past earthquake, oil wells, frac wells, and the past documentation that I've done on these earthquakes and frac locations. Again, like I said, there was some debate for many years, and I caught a lot of hell over the past 3 years talking about that. Now that it's been acknowledged, I think it makes sense. I mean, you see an earthquake happen right above a frac well, and that's a 4.2. Again, let's get back over here and take a quick look. It's the largest that's happened in the last several weeks. We saw 4.0 activity in Kansas at the Kansas fracking operations just a few weeks ago. So overall, guys, if you can, come over to my YouTube channel and check out my earthquake updates that I did. I specifically talked about the pressure building on the North American Craton. Let me just go ahead and show that to you really quick here. Okay, and we'll go ahead and turn down the ring so you can actually see the content. There's so many events that have happened. All right, so if you connect these dots here, literally from the Pacific Northwest down here to Oklahoma and Texas, and then back up the East Coast, this defines the edge of the unsubducted portion of the North American Craton. It's called the Craton, okay? Laurentia is the name of it. This is being displaced. They said this would never happen, that pressure would come from the west and displace the whole plate slightly upwards and southeast. And that's been verified now via measurements at Yellowstone along the edge of the western portion of the Craton has been moved slightly. It caused a series of landslides and other odd geologic events to occur over the last several months, which they came up with different stories for this and that. I can tell you, it's due to the pressure that's been building along the western edge of the North American plate. Subduction is not taking care of the pressure that is building. Why? Well, we're seeing a disturbance happen in the asthenosphere in the West Pacific. Now, this is kind of getting really in depth. You can go watch my earthquake update from a few days ago talking about this. The asthenosphere is being disturbed. That's about 350 miles deep. This is happening in the West Pacific. That's causing an entire movement of the Pacific plate. So, the pressure that's been building here in the West Pacific is spilling over across the Pacific plate, and we've seen it happen time and time again. Now that what that's causing is pressure to be placed on the North American plate that's not being subducted. Instead, the pressure is transferring across the entire plate, like geologists said could never happen. But this tells the tale of it right here, just this last week's movement alone. You can see huge cluster of earthquakes, 2.5 and greater only is what we're looking at here, starting in the west, and then they pop off at the fracking operations, and then spill back up the east coast and go up, literally up into New Brunswick and Quebec. Now, the earthquake that happened there just fell off the map. That was 4 or 5 days ago. So, this basically says to me that the pressure that's been building along the North American plate is a pressure transfer situation happening from a situation across the entire world that we really can't ignore at this point. Add in the volcanic activity. We've been putting out video after video after video of the volcanoes that have been erupting, not just in Hawaii. Of course, Hawaii produces awesome footage, by the way. I'll put a link down below for this. You guys should come over and check this out, okay? Some of the best video that I've ever seen when it comes to lava flow footage. This is put out by the Department of Defense. And you can watch this in HD. This is in low res. I'm going to turn this on high resolution here really quick. Really impressive. If you're a nerd like I am when it comes to volcanoes, earthquakes, geology, you will love this video. And go check out the Barder Bunga video over in Iceland, which is still going strong. As a matter of fact, the volcano that have been erupting over the last several weeks, that's another sign of the global unrest that is occurring. It's no exaggeration for me to call this a global unrest at this point, since the American Geophysical Union and the USGS-sponsored event last month confirmed what they're calling a global surge of earthquakes and volcano activity. No culprit identified yet, but they've acknowledged that a global surge is underway. If you add in the activity of the volcanoes on the west coast, which are not being talked about in the news, you have to come over to my channel and check it out. I am the only one talking about the west coast volcanic activity, the different volcanoes, the dormant volcanoes that have been showing activity over in Scotland. We have the activity at the dormant volcano in North Scotland. Of course, up here today, very strange North Pole earthquake, and let's just get the earthquake coordinates on this. This is just north of Polaris, Canada, about 70 miles north of Polaris. I don't really know what to make of it, guys. It could be an undersea volcano. It could be some kind of fault line being disturbed there due to the activity over in Iceland. We're talking about just thousands of miles being displaced here. It's evident in the earthquake activity that you see occurring around the planet. And if we take this down on a date-wise, we can just watch the earthquakes pop off internationally as well as we did in the United States. You will see that they're spilling over from the Pacific, over literally across in cluster points at pressure spots that are being released globally. So it's kind of a global displacement event that's happening here. It's happening in slow motion over a large area, and it's happening in the 4 to 5, upwards of 6.0 earthquakes that have been happening back to back, one right after the other. Again, this is just the last 7 days of 4.0 and greater internationally and 2.5 and greater in the United States. So, a lot of activity to see. As I said, my earthquake update yesterday, 2 days ago, this is over the activity that we saw in 2011 before the Japan earthquake around the Pacific Ring, which lets us know we need to watch the Pacific Ring for large-scale movement because of the smaller earthquake events that have been happening in such cluster points, okay? Just look at it. Really, this is no exaggeration. I can even just turn these rings off so we don't have any dramatic effect, and you can only see the actual events. 2.5 and greater. We can even turn it up. If you're a skeptic and you say, oh, earthquakes happen all the time, you know, anything over a 3.0 isn't even worth documenting. Okay, let's take it up to 3.5. There we go, 3.4, 3.5. Still a lot of activity to see. It really is. By any measure, by any means, you can go back and compare to the earthquake videos that I was doing in 2011 at the time of the Japan earthquake. You can just compare number-wise. Someone should do the count. I know somebody did in 2011 after the Japan event. Somebody should do the count for this past year for 2014. Let us know. What's the total number? I'd be shocked to hear. With the number of swarms that have happened like this here in Nevada, not just in Nevada, Mono Lake, just south. You guys remember this just a few months ago. Each location along the west coast that's had the swarms. We talked Mono Lake, down here south at Salton Sea, further south at Baja, and up here north, right near Mount St. Helens. So a series of swarm locations, and Yellowstone. So a series of swarms have happened over the last year here. Excessive to the point where it made media news. All right, so it's not just me talking about it. We're talking about earthquake swarm happening here in California, Southern California earthquake swarm. They started talking about the Salton Sea volcano, not me. The mainstream media did. But you know, things are moving. They're going to continue to move, and we'll start to see bigger earthquake compensation movement, unfortunately. And I hope I'm wrong. Hope I'm wrong 100%. Hope this all just dies out and things start to calm down a little bit. But the 4.2 in the Midwest, very close to the New Madrid seismic zone where I'm in St. Louis here. That is something we need to watch, okay? 4.2 there means we're going to see some activity over here to the east as the pressure builds and spreads out across the plate, which is not subducted. It's very rigid. You've got mountain ranges here. That's all being put under pressure due to the movement here in the Northwest. Again, one more time. Northwest causing pressure to be placed southeastward along the plate. That's caused movement in the inches at Yellowstone and Colorado, causing massive landslides, sinkholes, all sorts of events that have been happening that they've been covering up with the craziest cover stories because this causes all of geology to be turned on its head. Normally, Mid-Atlantic Ridge spreads, puts pressure on the East Coast, which then pushes west. But the subduction process takes care of the Pacific Plate, and we live in a naturally balanced world where nothing ever changes, right? Okay, we're seeing inches in a year, movement, rise. We're talking about mountain ranges. California, confirmed risen a ½ inch in 1 year's time this past year, blamed on the drought. They said the crust dried out and rose because it dried out. Go look the stories up. Don't have to take my word for it. It was an asinine story, but there it is. So what does it mean? It really means that the plate is being displaced upwards and southeast in a massive amount, and it's causing recharging at magma chambers. Yellowstone confirmed recharging. Mount St. Helens confirmed recharging. Shasta confirmed recharging. Mount Lassen under observation. Mono Lake having swarms. Put it all together, guys. Okay, you're not going to hear this from a mainstream media geologist. Are they going to ever take a time to make a YouTube video and explain anything? No. They denied that the craton was even being displaced. They denied that fracking could even cause earthquakes. I had to fight tooth and nail for 4 years getting that through people's heads. Go back and look. One guy out there on the internet talking about this stuff. It was me. I'm not looking for any credit either. I'll never get that. That's a scientific establishment. You will never get credit if you disprove them. Only if you prove something to them do you get that credit. So, you can never prove something to anybody on a YouTube video, by the way. You can only explain your own opinion, which I have done, I hope, sufficiently in this video, okay? 4.2 starts to bother me. Nobody else is going to talk about it. They'll say, oh, earthquakes happen all the time. I got better things to worry about. Well, when something falls off your shelf, when your stereo falls over, you come home and your flat screen's knocked over and broke, and you don't have anybody to blame, and you got to go buy a new TV on your own, you'll care. And if it doesn't happen here in Oklahoma, it might happen in Arkansas, might happen in Ohio, might happen in Tennessee or Kentucky, or like the 5.9 that happened in Virginia. The 5.9 that wrecked the East Coast and caused damage to the Washington Monument, located very close to a fracking operation. Nobody wants to talk about that. No. Or how about the 5.0 that happened earlier in the week in Colorado at the fracking operation in Trinidad, right here at the border of New Mexico and Colorado. 5.0 strikes down here at the border of Colorado and New Mexico. 5.9 then strikes here in Virginia, and no one wants to talk about it. No geologist comes out with some blazing new paper to secure their career in the field of geology. No, nobody wants to talk about it. Why? Why? It's repeating itself again now. And what can be done to stop it? I don't know. Maybe letting off on the fracking a little bit. Maybe suspending operations temporarily until things calm down. Look at the swarm happening to the west. Look, you've got a huge amount of pressure happening here, being released This is surface earthquake activity, guys. We're not talking deep. Some of these earthquakes, most of these earthquakes, at the surface, 0.0 kilometers. What's at the location? You'll have to go watch my other videos. I don't have time to go into everything here. I can tell you this. It's a volcanic rift, ancient. No one's talking about that either. But they are talking about watching Mount Lassen, which is just southwest of the swarm location here in Nevada, producing multiple 4.0s, upper 4.0s, over and over and over again. This is just the last 7 days. We're still looking at just the 3 and 4.0s only. You can look at the smaller earthquakes and you can't even fit them on the map. All in one spot. So, this has kind of turned into more of a little rant on my part as opposed to an earthquake video. Normally I would just be straight up and just tell you the earthquake information. This is how I feel, folks. Trying to explain this to everyone is rather frustrating because most people don't want to even listen. No one listens until the 5.9 strikes in Virginia, and then everything's destroyed, and everybody says, what happened? You try and tell them, then they call you conspiracy theorist. That's what they called me, a conspiracy theorist, for reporting this stuff. Oh, Dutchin is fracking earthquakes. Pfft. Well, look where we are now. USGS acknowledged it. American Geophysical Union acknowledged it. They're having conferences on it. They're discussing global unrest. The longest time, people said, there's no unrest underway. No, none at all. There's no uptick happening. You're just a fearmonger. Meanwhile, look at the earthquake activity. Just look at it. Okay. Interesting. It's really interesting to see. And it's interesting to see the resistance from people. Or the complete just lack of caring. Nobody watches you. Nobody even, earthquake? Okay, unless it's big, I don't want to know. Well, you'll want to know. This is how you prepare. You know where it's happening now, so you know the adjacent areas are the areas that are under stress. I mean, you live next to the earthquake swarm area here in Nevada. You might not know if you live in California. There's millions of people in California, right? And what, I've got a few hundred people even watching or caring? The people in California will care when the area just west of here goes, or just northwest. Where? Well, there's so many earthquakes, it's hard to see. Let's just say northwest California, just northwest of there. Huge earthquake strikes. Everybody was shocked and caught off guard when the big 6.0 struck here just a few months ago. Caused all that damage. Right? Oh, we didn't see it coming. Well, everybody online did. Any viewer of mine saw it coming. Nobody else even talks about it. Really, how many other earthquake full updates do you get out there? There aren't anybody. Only people that jump on the big ones. They're like, oh, big earthquake. Oh, I got to report on it. Nobody is reporting on what leads up to it, or what the cause is, or why there's a disturbance happening here in the first place. Why is there a disturbance happening in the West Pacific? In the asthenosphere, at 350 miles deep below the plate, where the plates are resting on top of. Why is that occurring? That's what piquing my curiosity at this point. Now, we see a solar correlation. When there's large solar flare activity, incoming CME activity, sunspot activity, there is an increase in earthquake activity. Could it be related? Is there a weak spot here? What's causing it? Japan was just to the north of here in 2011. We had the Sumatra tsunami a few years prior, 2009, 2007. So this area here is in serious flux. Now, it traditionally always has been. Multiple volcanic island chains. It's picking up in pace. Why? Why is the deep earth being perturbed? Now that leads into a whole nother topic that I've covered, which is frequency. We could get into the amount of frequency that is going to ground, going down to the core of the earth, ultimately, magnetically, electromagnetically, going to the core of the earth, all the man-made transmissions being emitted, microwave, high power, billions of watts of energy being transmitted out by humans and being transferred down into the core of the planet. Could that have a perturbed effect on the, magnetized magma that's flowing under the ground like a charged magnet? Yeah, I think it could. Could that cause volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, severe weather, and other anomalies on the planet? Yes, it sure could. But it would require us to acknowledge that the high frequency systems that we're using may be having an effect, an unintended effect on the planet's core. And it might cause geologists to have to acknowledge something, a glaring fact about the center of the Earth. Something that's hotter than all of the elements known to man must be at the core of the Earth, melting those elements. It has to be something hotter than. It is not pressure that is causing heat at an exponential rate like that to melt every known metal known to man, every known rock, reduced to a flowing liquid. There's something else at the core of the planet, most likely, in my opinion, a plasma core of some kind. High frequency plasma core, plasma energy that is hot enough to cut through and melt the strongest material. And that's what melts magma and sends it up magnetically charged from the center core of the Earth. It's not nickel metal, hard solid core at the center of the Earth. This is some old geology from the 1800s that needs to be debunked. Okay? But first things first, there's a huge displacement event happening. It's obvious, okay? I just went on a huge lecture trying to explain to you a small 4.2 earthquake. Why? Because it's all interconnected at this point. I think it's pretty obvious. The volcanic eruptions happening around that are just starting to become excessive. The earthquake activity becoming excessive. Put it all together yourself, folks, okay? I'm just trying to help. Much love. Be safe. Have an earthquake plan ready and be prepared. You know my saying? Don't be scared. Be prepared. Just in case. Much love, guys.